Webster defines a journey as traveling from one place to another. But in Journey to the Overland, you will do a lot more than just travel. From the moment your character leaves his hometown, you'll begin to experience the encounters and adventures that could only take place in Journey to the Overland. Whether you're new to fantasy gaming or an old role-playing veteran, you'll feel right at home, yet uncomfortably new to the world of Overland. Far more than a board game, but not quite role-playing, Journey to the Overland combines the best elements of each. Set in a world where sorcery, magic, and might are the greatest powers, and surviving is the only law, Journey to the Overland gives you what the other games won't: a chance to tackle it all alone. With its unique encounter cards, various scenarios, and extensive use of non-playing characters, you have everything you need to enjoy hours of travels and adventures. But the only way to truly appreciate the commitment and dedication that went into this game is to grab your favorite figure, grab the dice, and start playing. Welcome to a way of gaming you will never leave, because once you begin it, there's no returning from. A Journey to the Overland. Previously on Journey to the Overland. After being wounded and trapped in the infested mountains by an avalanche, Maverick is finally freed by the help of his friend Lila, her winged Pegasus, and her raiding bandits. But their travels are cut short soon after beginning, when the land is struck by a plague, causing them to remain where they are until it passes. Hello travelers, and welcome to another episode of Journey to the Overland. So if you read the opening dialogue, you can see that I've actually played out the last week with Maverick and Lila off camera. And I don't know if you all remember, but the last time we were on camera, they had encountered a plague. And the plague had basically required that they stay put and not travel, or else they risk catching the plague, in which case if they had caught the plague, they would have been suffering 3 wounds a day until they could make it to King's Castle and get the antidote. So both of them chose to remain where they were, and at the time they were up here, which was noted on their sheet in Hex 2017. Which is a little bit right outside of the town of Wood Dam, which is up there. And so basically what I'm going to do is kind of bring you up to speed on some of the things that played out off camera. So let's take a look. So the first character we're going to look at is Maverick. Now, if you recall, I don't know if you recall or not, but his endurance was at 37 when they stopped. He was still pretty beat up from the avalanche that had occurred, and it trapped him somewhere up in the mountains. So he spent the whole week resting and healing, as we indicated. So he healed, every day he rested, he healed 3 wounds from resting. Unfortunately, most of that time they weren't able to eat. So he lost 2 wounds. And one thing I want to show you is how you would work that out. So if you have a situation where you have a character that is not eating, but they're resting, and basically he's healing 3 wounds, but he's losing 2 wounds, the first thing you do is you add the wounds from resting.
So he was at 37. This is his endurance. This was Lila's. He rested. That was his daily action. So he would get 3. That would put him at 40. Because he didn't eat, he would lose 2 due to the effects of starvation setting in. Alright, so his endurance for that day would be 38. Now, and this is important because Lila's maximum endurance is 69. She chose a rest as well as her daily action. Because you can't go over your original endurance by resting, that wouldn't affect her. So she would get 2 from not eating, would put her at 67. Now, the next day, again, Maverick could rest. He would heal 3 wounds, put him at 40. He would lose 2 if he didn't eat. Well, no, that would actually put him at 41. He would lose 2 if he didn't eat, and he'd end at 39. So you see, a person who is wounded is gradually going to get better, even if they're not eating, simply because they're just resting and they're not doing nothing. They're not using much energy. On the other hand, somebody whose endurance is at its maximum level, she can rest. So she would heal 3 wounds, but it's up to her maximum of 69. So she wouldn't put her at 70. She'd be at 69. She would lose 2 again, though, for not eating, which would put her at 67. So somebody that's kind of at their max, if they simply aren't eating every day, is going to kind of always hover below their maximum endurance, even for not eating. Now, unfortunately for Lila, on the last day of the hunt, she was severely wounded. They had hunted pretty good. I think the only thing they really caught and killed was a badger, which was one day's food, which they gave to Maverick, since he was more severely wounded. So, but on the very last day, they rode in the hunt and they encountered a wolf. Neither one of them could kill it, and she was wounded. And she took 20 wounds. The number of wounds you take in a hunt depends on the type of animal you encounter. And the wolf is one of the worst ones. I think other than the bear, that's the worst one. If you get wounded hunting a bear, you take 40 wounds, which a lot of people, that will kill them. For example, so if Maverick had been hunting, with this endurance, as wounded as he was, and if he had tried to kill a bear and failed and got wounded, he would have died in that hunt. So you can't die when you're hunting. What they decided to do was let Lila do the hunting, and Maverick would just help her try to kill anything. So the next thing is, because another week of play finished, Lila finished her first week of play. So she gained 2,000 experience points for completing one game, and a game is considered 2 weeks of play. And she earned 500 experience points because she accumulated a week's worth of hunting, if you can see here. So she finally got to a week. So every week you spend hunting, you get 500 experience points. Maverick didn't get any experience points for hunting because he wasn't hunting. He was just helping her kill him. However, he did finish another week of play, even though he's starting his 4th week. And he never spent his initial XP, which is, I think it's 4,000 is what you start with. So he's actually at 6,000 experience points, which basically, if he can get through 2 more games or another 4 weeks of play, he would be at 10,000 experience points at least, which then gives him enough to really start looking at some options of buying some skills. And that's kind of the key to this game. I mean, at some point in this game, you've got to pick up skills. There's certain skills that are going to help you with hunting. There's certain skills that are going to help you with fighting, healing. I mean, it's almost impossible to heal in this game without some kind of healing skill or healing potion. So let's just see what you can get with 10,000 experience points, what kind of skills that opens up for you. Okay, so if we look at page 38, the first skill is Alchemist. And this skill actually allows you to create healing potions. Heck, it allows you to create water. And some other things, like you can make acid, which would be good in combat. I mean, it's not necessarily a skill you'd want to spend that kind of stuff on because, you know, long term, I don't really know what you would get out of it, but that's available. Now, Warrior is another 10,000 skill point, and this is actually probably the most common skill that people purchase at 10,000. The thing about it, now, in order to get Warrior, though, you have to have killed at least 10 people or creatures. So Maverick couldn't get that yet. I don't think he's killed anybody. But you also have to own a sword, which is plus 10 modifier better, and as well as some partial plate armor or better. Now, you don't have to always have that once you get the warrior skill, but basically that's put in there because if you're going to be a warrior, you need to at least have shown that you've used the sword and you've worn armor and so forth. I mean, it's kind of arbitrary, but you know, still, if you're going to be a warrior, you should look the part. The main thing that the warrior skill allows you to do is lead troops. And that'll come into play later in the game. I think there was a episode where Lila was joined by some bandits, Hunvish, I believe his name was, or Huvish, and he was leading troops. If you have warrior skill, for example, there would have been some circumstances where you could have maybe took his troops and you could have led his troops into battle for him. And you get experience points for doing that. It's sort of like if you remember a lot of the Conan stories where Conan would join a band of mercenaries and then he would become the leader and he would lead those troops into battle or war. That's why I kind of wrote that aspect into the game, is because I wanted to have that feel at any given time maybe your character would just find himself leading troops. And troops are represented in this game by the counters, little game counters or tokens. Now, another skill that a warrior has, and this skill is very precise, because a lot of times, you know, I've gotten it wrong when I've used it, is a warrior can strike 2 opponents in one turn, but cannot strike one opponent twice. And that's important, which means if a warrior is fighting more than one person, he can actually strike 2 of them in one of his turns. So basically he could attack 2 people. But if he's only fighting one person, he cannot strike that one person twice. I think the barbarian can, but not the warrior. And then other than that, I mean, you could get the thief skill, which the thief skill opens up a whole lot of other avenues. There's like a thieves guild and things like that, so you can go into different towns and you can try to join up with the thieves guild, so that could put some extra money in your pocket. There's a table called work for the guild table, so you got to be careful working with the thieves guild, though they'll double cross you. So I'm just letting you know. I mean, it's like what's that, Farf and the Gray Mauser and them, the stories from Fritz Lieber. You know, being a thief is not easy. You can be double crossed. There's the merchant skill, and this is if you want to play a character who's kind of more geared toward amassing wealth and exchanging and buying things. The nice thing about the merchant table is it allows you, as you travel, to actually take items from one town and sell them in another town, you know, and start making money as a merchant. Now, if I was to play the merchant, I think the way I would approach the game would be is I try to get as much money as I can, accumulate as much wealth as I can, and then I would start to look to hire people around me, especially what are called NPC comrades. And these are basically characters that when you roll so high on the NPC reaction table, like 90 or higher, they actually, you get to play them. You get their card and you keep them, and you can play them almost instead of playing your own character within limits. But they're called NPC comrades. So if you're a powerful merchant, and say you're set up in a town like Future Town, which is one of the wealthier towns, and you've got 1 or 2 NPC comrades, you could literally be sending guys out through the overland to fight dragons, acquire gold, finish quests, and then these guys are bringing all this stuff back to you, and you're kind of like the power behind the throne. So that's kind of cool. It takes a longer arc. It's a longer story arc to be a successful merchant. But if you go down this way, you got to buy into it, right? You can't be trying to, increase your fighting skills, and you're not going to be out there trying to, encounter people personally. You kind of want to be able to use your money, and eventually there's things in here where you can hire armies, and you can, attack towns, and you can kind of make yourself king. Because if you have enough money, I mean, you can do a lot of things. But a lot of people won't play this. I mean, I may try a story arc doing a merchant. I've always been tempted to. It's not as sexy as being the warrior, the barbarian, but it's subtle. It's subtle. And then of course we've got the 5,000 experience point minstrel, the 10,000 XP healer. Boy, isn't that one? That is the lucky skill of the day. I mean, that's the one there, right there, man. That's the one people want, is that healer. And if you're a character and you can get healing skill, you're going to be valuable to a lot of other characters. A lot of people will protect you and keep you safe. There's also the assassin skill for 8,000 XPs. Now, the odd thing about being an assassin, because assassins are powerful, and they gain access to special weapons like the sap, the garret, and the grenado, which is basically a bomb, right? And because when you unlock this skill, you can then purchase these special weapons as part of your skill. The problem with being an assassin is you can pretty much rule out being a knight, right? Because they don't let knights become assassins. However, there's also certain situations where, as an assassin, that you are going to encounter constables, or you're going to encounter soldiers, and if it becomes known that you're an assassin, you're going to be in trouble. So it's not an easy life, but again, it's a skill that other people might be willing to pay for. Other characters might be willing to pay you for. Alright, and then that gets us kind of out of the 10,000 XP skills. But just at 10,000 experience points, you really do see that you get to open up a lot of options in the game. So if you get discouraged when you first start out, just hold on, right? If you can just keep playing the game, you're going to earn enough XPs after about 3 or 4 games if you don't spend your starting XPs, right? Don't spend that initial bundle you get. You will have enough after about three whole games or 6 weeks to then really unlock some options. All right, let's get back to Maverick and Lila for the time being. Okay, so if we get back to Maverick, I guess the first thing I'll address, in case anybody's wondering, is, well, why did I split him and Lila up? And really, it was just a matter of being able to speed up the gameplay. I mean, it kind of bogged down a little bit trying to run both characters, update both of their logs, kind of make decisions with their resources and their daily action. So I just kind of made the decision to split them up. Now, it probably would have been better for Maverick if I had left Lila with him, because Lila was actually somewhat better equipped, having the Pegasus. She had money, which he still doesn't have any money. I'm probably going to give him some of her money. I think it would make sense that she would leave him with something since she's heading home. She didn't have any food to give him because they went through all their food. And other than the last day, she was actually okay. So she was pretty well, but that wolf tore her up pretty good. So I'm assuming I will get back to her. I'd like to make sure she gets home, and I might play that off map just to let you guys know. I don't know whether she's going to make it home or not. Neither does Maverick. But for this game session and going forward, we're going to pick up the story and the journey of Maverick. Now, the first thing we need to do, because we are starting a new week, is we're going to need to pull another event card. We're going to need to shuffle the weather deck and pull another weather card, because Maverick is starting, it would be the first day of his 4th week. Now, another decision I decided to make is, I am going to shuffle in a second weather deck with the current weather deck. And that way it'll give me a little more randomness in my weather. So I won't get the same thing coming up over and over again, you know, fog, uh, rain, uh, you know, volcanoes over and over again. And initially when I envisioned doing the game as part of the Kickstarter, I was probably going to have about double the weather cards that wound up being in it, you know, when it went to print and things. And that's something I hope to correct for my original backers after we get through with the fulfillment. Is I'd like to mail all of them an additional weather deck. And hopefully, you know, when I do the follow-up Kickstarter, the 1.5 or whatever, since I guess that's what Kingdom Death calls it, I'm going to just throw that in to any of my existing backers that backed the second Kickstarter for the Redux are going to just get another free deck of weather cards. So that you can get some more randomness. It doesn't make as much of a difference in the event deck. I mean, you could do that, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference. They're only pulled once a week. So, I mean, you know, there's only 52 weeks in a year, and I think there's like 25 of those. So, you know, the odds of you even getting one twice, even with it not like that, is only one in 25. So, but what I'm going to do is I am going to shuffle another weather deck in there. So that'll actually give us a lot more interesting weather results. So then you get things where you may see a week where it snows every day or a week where it rains every day. And again, one of the things I talked about is, you know, the one thing I really love about this game is it's very customizable. I mean, it's very adaptable. So say, for example, I said, okay, this is the spring that he's traveling in. I could take all the winter cards out. So anything that talked about snow or ice, I could just take those out because it's spring, so or summer. So you wouldn't see that. On the other hand, if I said he's traveling in the winter, then I could kind of take out a lot of the summary or the spring cards, and I can kind of overload the deck with winter events. You can do the same thing if you're in a certain country or land. Say you're playing in a Frostgrave like area. Well, then you could just leave all the ice and snow cards in there. Nothing but weather that says ice or snow. Because that's exactly what the weather would be in a place like that. So let's do that, and then let's pull the next event card for the week coming up. Okay, so these are all shuffled. Let's see what the weather's going to be like today. Looks like we got rain. Characters traveling on foot without high boots, -1 from their movement. Subtract 10 from their ability score. So that basically means if you're trying to fight out in the rain, it's actually going to be pretty difficult, which makes sense. The main thing I want to know is what the event's going to be. We just got through going through the plague. So I know that card's not going to come up again. Let's see. So, Avalanche. Ha! This is the thing that hit Maverick the last time he played. The mountains are very dangerous. He's not in the mountains. So, that won't have an effect on him this game. But today's weather is rain. And I guess the only thing he has left now to do is choose his daily action. Alright, so let me tell you what I'm thinking. Lila gave me 20 gold pieces before she left. So that'll give me enough to pay for lodging and things when I get back into, when I get to Wood Dam. So I'm going to try to head into town. I already have 9 silver pieces. I have my short sword. My endurance, I got to fill that in. I think my endurance is at 44. So I really don't want to be getting in any fights. But if I can get to Wood Dam, maybe find some work, find some news and information. Find somebody that with some healing ability. So I am going to do a travel action. We're going to see where that would get us. Since we are in, I'm going to go around, I'm going to try to go around here, which is kind of through the grassland. Because if I go through here, that's, that's technically forest or grassland. And I would almost say you have to roll. Because if you choose this one as open land, and this one's going to be forest. So rather than have to deal with going through the forest, even though you have I think you have a less of an encounter in the forest. Let me check that. Because if so, then I could go through there. I don't know if I'll get forest for the first hex. The forest or woodlands. There's only 45% chance of an encounter. That's not bad. Open land is 75%. Okay, so this hex here, I'm going to consider it to be open land. The next one would be forest. The only problem is if you go into the forest from open land, you got to check for getting lost. Which I don't want to wind up lost so close to wood dam. So I'll go through the open land. Which is what's the percent encounter? I think it's 75. So the black would be my 10 die. 80! Ho ho! No encounter. Sweet. So I get to move, I think is it move 2 or move 3? That is sweet. So let me work out this movement. I'll be back. Okay, so I was able to move, but because of the rain, and I don't have high boots, I already checked, I was only able to make it 1 hex. But I don't think that'll be too bad. The rate is 2 a day. That's going to keep me, like I would have got into wood dam the next day if I had been able to go 1, 2, then 1, 2. Now it's going to take me another day to get there, and that's assuming the weather holds up. But I don't have anything to eat. And I'm concerned if I go hunting, I could wind up getting wounded. In which case, well, I don't know. My ability score is 80%. So I'd only have a 20% chance of getting wounded. Although it's been very hard for me to catch anything. On the other hand, how many times have I hunted? So I think I'm very close to earning some more experience points. For hunting. So you got to keep track of this stuff somewhere. Alright, so my hunting, I've hunted 4 times. So if I hunt 3 more times, I'll earn 500 XP. Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, so I'm going to take the 2 wounds if I don't eat. You know what? Today I'm not going to hunt. I'm just going to take the 2 wounds. That'll put me at 46. I checked my endurance. It's at 48. So let's move on to the next day. So here's the weather card for the second day. It's snowing. Roads are slippery. Players are traveling on foot -1 from their movement rate. If you have a snow dog and a sled, you can use them to travel. So the weather's really not being my friend at all. I've encountered rain, now I'm encountering snow. All in the same week. So again, that supports my argument that you might want to create themed decks with regards to the weather. But I don't have any choice. I had to take those 2 wounds, so I've got to try to travel again. The event card doesn't change. 75% chance of an encounter. I do have an encounter. Don't have to check for getting lost because I'm not going to different terrain. This is the hex I'm moving to. So, but I do have to check for an encounter. So let's pull that. And who do we encounter? Holy cow, an assassin. You are the target of a deadly assassin. Any negative roll on the NPC reaction table and she surprises you. Any positive roll when you surprise her. she will stay at least 3 hexes away and attack with her 65% crossbow. Holy cow. If you close on her, she will evade to 2 hexes away. She will flee after using all her bolts. So basically, this is some cowardly assassin that's just going to sit here and try to shoot me with her crossbow. Right? She's not going to let me get close enough to fight her. Although she has a pretty high ability. Her endurance is pretty high. It says, if she gets away, the next encounter you have, there is a 60% chance it will be this encounter again. Oh, wow. So that means if she gets away and I pull another encounter when I'm traveling, I have to roll a card because there's a 60% chance that it will just be her instead as the assassin again attacking me. So there's kind of an incentive. If you let her get away, she's going to keep showing up until she kills you. Okay, so here's a view of our female assassin getting a bead on Maverick. Now, why she's trying to kill Maverick, I do not know. Let me just show you the figure. I just had to go try to find one of the figures out in my collection. So this is I think she's actually an elf figure, but she's a female. And she has a bow. So she's going to do for purposes of this game. Now, one of the things you could do as part of Journey to the Overland, which I would highly recommend if you're able to do it, is you could go through your encounter deck before you even begin to play and actually get miniatures out your collection and kind of put them to the side or write the name somewhere on them and say, you know, this is my assassin miniature. You know, in this case, a female assassin. So that way when you pull a card, you might already have your miniatures in a case or a box, especially some of those, you know, those little tackle boxes with the different compartments. And then all you got to do is open it up and you take out the appropriate miniature. I may do that at some point. And if I do, I might even do a video just to kind of go through my selection process. Especially Reaper is good for that because this game has a lot of NPCs in it. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities to use miniatures from your collection. Now, getting back to our situation at hand, I've decided Maverick is going to make a evade or flee action, as of course, because even though he gets the surprise on her, he rolled a 71 on the NPC table. So according to the card, since that was a positive roll, he could surprise her in combat. So she's 2 hexes away from him. He hasn't moved for the day. So he'd have to use his movement to close on her because she's actually 3, which is 1, 2, 3. But he could get adjacent to her in 2. Right? And he could get a strike in. He would be able to move on her, get his strike in combat, which would be considered a surprise. Now, I don't know if that means that he gets any kind of bonus for surprising her. But I decided rather than let him get stuck in combat with her, because even in combat she does have a high agility and endurance. The other thing is the card said she's going to move the first chance she gets. Now, I would actually get a free strike for her moving. So again, the fact that I've surprised her is a benefit. The problem is I could wind up in a situation where, let's just say Maverick does that. I move here. I get my free strike. She then uses hers. She moves 2 to back away from me, right? So she can shoot. Now, technically, we're still locked into combat. So I have to decide this next turn, she's out of range for me to attack her. And I don't have a missile weapon. So my only choice at this point would be to evade. Now, according to the evade rules, even if you've already moved, you can still get your 2 free for evading. So let's just say then I evade back to where I came from because I don't want to follow her around, obviously. Because I'm leaving, she would get a free strike. I don't know what the range on her crossbow is, whether she'd be in range. Range of 4. RG is range. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd be just out of her range. she would then be allowed to make her move, which is called a pursuit, actually. So I'd have to roll to see whether she tries to pursue me. If I pass a luck check, she doesn't. If I fail the luck check, she does try to pursue me. If she tries to pursue me, then she would be able to get her pursuit move, which would be right there. And because she's in range with her missile weapon, she would then get to fire. Okay, and her crossbow is, how many? What's the rate on there? 3. And the bolts do -4 damage each. So that would be a potential another 12 points of damage. So basically, it would be a long, convoluted process where I would basically take 12 points of damage, or risk taking 12 points of damage. She, on the other hand, has very little risk. I'm not going to be able to kill her, and I can't keep chasing her, you know, all the way back across the map or down the map, because I'm going to get further away from where I'm heading. So by doing an evade option, I can immediately move 2, and I'll be closer to Wood Dam. She will obviously either pursue me or not pursue me, and even if she doesn't pursue me, the next time if I have an encounter, it might be her again. But I am going to do that evade option. Okay, so here's the view after my evade option. My luck is only 43. So I've got to get 43 or less in order for her not to pursue me. And again, remember when we were first rolling up the stats, how I told you every stat is important at some point. And now we're going to see about luck. 61. So I failed. So she will pursue me, which allows her to move 2. 1, 2. She's now within range of her missile weapon, so she will fire. I think it's a 65. Hopefully she'll miss. What was that? She rolled an 11, so she hit. So I'm going to take 12 points of damage. Alright, so and another thing that allows me to show you is I'm keeping track of my damage and my wounds on a separate sheet of paper. Because as you will become aware, if you keep, you know, erasing and scratching on your character sheet, you know, you're going to wear the sheet out. Now, I've seen in some other role-playing games where people will put a, they will laminate these, or they will put some type of protector, like document protector over it, and then use some wet erase markers. So you could try that. I don't really like the look of markers, but so what I do is I do it here. If I know I'm in a situation where I'm going to be adjusting my wounds a lot, or any stat a lot, because he's not eating, because he's in combat, then I will do this, and then I'll kind of move it over later on. But right now, his endurance is at 34, which is actually pretty bad. Okay, so here's our weather for day 3. Yes. Strong winds. Brisk, strong winds. What? Roll on the random direction chart. If you travel in the direction row, you may add 2 to your movement. So what's that direction going to be? 98. I think that's north. Let me see. Okay, so using the cheatography sheet again, which has been very helpful, I rolled a 98. Oh, you're only supposed to roll 1 die. So let's roll that again. I rolled a 6. So a 6 is west, which is the way I'm going. That would be north, and that would be west. So yes, he gets to add 2 to his movement today, which means he would basically be able to get right on into town. So that's beautiful, beautiful. Of course, I guess the assassin will get to add 2 to hers. Now, when you're being pursued, you have to refer to the combat section of the game. Because what happens in a pursuit is, if you get pursued for 2 days in a row, you're considered fleeing. So the first time you leave a combat is an evade. If the NPC pursues you, as happened in this case, you're then considered to still be evading, except for the second day, meaning if they follow you again, you're now fleeing from them. And the problem with fleeing is any day after that second day, you start to roll in a random direction. meaning you're basically so desperate to get away, you're no longer concerned with where you were going. You're just trying to give them the slip. So if you go from evading to fleeing, you then have to start rolling in a random direction. And the rules for that is on page 123, which says fleeing occurs when a character continues to try and evade an opponent that is pursuing them. Once a character makes 2 or more evade moves and his opponent continues to pursue him, then the character is considered to be fleeing. So that's one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to break out into an uncontrolled flight from this assassin. So let's see when I move whether or not this NPC pursues me. I have to check how that rule works. Okay, so here's the situation. This is day 3. We've got strong winds, which would probably carry me into Wood Dam if I travel today. Unfortunately, I'm being pursued, or Maverick is being pursued by an assassin. Now, I just referred to the rules, and essentially, once you start evading, you either have to continue evading or you have to resume the combat. Meaning, I can either now attack her and try to end this, or I can choose another evade action. Once an NPC is pursuing you, they will continue to pursue you until the combat is resumed and resolved, or until one of the conditions that ends the pursuit occurs, which means, for example, you enter a town. So whenever you're entering a town, if an NPC is pursuing you, they will stop. Meaning they're not going to follow you in town and see the constables and everybody see them chasing you. The other problem is once you have made 2 evade actions, which this would be my second one, you're then considered fleeing. Which means tomorrow, if for some reason I don't make it into Wood Dam, tomorrow I would be having to move in a random direction, or else I'd have to resolve the combat. Now, when you are evading, you cannot do any other move beside evade. In order to use these winds, I'd have to choose a travel action, right? So that would give me the +2. So I can't do that unless I resolve this combat first, right? So the only thing I could do is an evade, which is a normal move action, which is only 2. Now, fortunately for me, an evade would get me into the town. It would end this combat. So I don't really need this +2, but I wanted to clarify that in case you find yourself in this situation. An evade action is not the same as traveling. Okay, but it says when you're evading, you cannot do any other thing besides make an evade move. And that's why it says that, is because if you want to take advantage of these winds, you'd have to have a travel action, but you need to resolve this combat. So I don't have to make a check in order to invade. I can just evade, which would be my move. But because I am in open land, I do have to check for an encounter. Now remember, there's a 60% chance that if I do have an encounter, it will just be this assassin. So I do have an encounter. I rolled a 33. I can't see that, but that's what I rolled with the black being the 10 die. So before I pull an encounter card, now I have to see if it's just her. Which in my case, that might actually help me. Because, I mean, Lord knows you don't want to be getting chased and then run into another group that attacks you, which can occur. Yep, so it is her. Because it's a 60% chance, which means 60 or less, it's her. So it is her. So basically, my encounter is the person that's already pursuing me. I'm going to make my evade action. Because I will reach the town, the pursuit is going to end. But she gets to make her normal move, and then she gets their free attack. Right? Because as long as she has a missile weapon, or if she gets adjacent to me while pursuing me, anytime I do an evade, she gets a free attack. So she's basically going to take a parting shot at me with her crossbow. 46. So I think she has a 65% crossbow. It has a rate of 3. They do 4 damage each, so I take another 12 points of damage. As I enter the town, she shoots 3 more arrows into my back. Okay, so we're actually at the start of day 4, but I'm gonna call this a session for today. Miles still has went into town. He's cashed into 20 gold for 60 silver pieces. Uh, he's bought some food. So he had 16 days of food. He used 36 to buy. Well, he bought 16 days of food for one person. Cost him 36 silver. It left him with 24. He had 9 on him. So he has 35 silver pieces, and I paid 10 for his lodging for the night. So that leaves him with 25 silver pieces. The food is going to be 15 because I forgot to subtract his meal for the day. But he's at an interesting point. We're going to be, when we come back, we'll be starting day 4. And I think he's going to wind up trying to get a job as a worker. He can get that job because his muscle score is high enough. It'll pay him 15 silver pieces a day. He'll spend 10 on his lodging. He'll keep 5. He has to work it for 2 weeks, though. But I don't think that really bothers me as much as it did back when I was in Miles still, because at the end of those 2 weeks, he will be close to 10,000 experience points. So he'll be looking at picking up a skill. One of his biggest problems, though, is he's really battered. He's only got 20 endurance left, and he's not going to be able to heal wounds while he's working on a job. But, unless some weird weather thing occurs, he won't take any more damage for the next 2 weeks. So, plus 5 times 14 is 70. So he'll have at least enough silver pieces to spend the next 7 days in town healing up a bit. And then, if he can make it to Morse Monastery, perhaps he can get healed there, because you heal 5 wounds a day. If he gets an audience with the father of the monastery, he might get healed or a healing potion. But I think this is a good place to stop. Now, one of the interesting things was I was rereading this assassin card, and basically the way this card reads is he's going to keep being dogged by this assassin until he either kills this assassin or she kills him. So there's going to be a 60% chance every time he has an encounter from now on that it's her. And that's what happens when you get an assassin on your tail. You either kill them or they kill you.
My name is Maverick. I'm from the town of Milesdale, and I live in the Overland. The Overland is a dangerous place. You never know what you will run into, and you never know what you will find. When at all possible, never ever travel alone. And when all else fails, it's better to run and live to fight another day. And in the end, if you have faith, hope will light your way.